Hey, thanks for joining me for Worktable Wednesday, June 9, 2021. We're going to be working with the Party Puffins Stamp Set, and this is a card base that I cut at 5.5 by 8.5, and I scored at 4 1/4. We're going to pick up our DSP from the Brights and use that, and we've talked in the past about all of the matting dimensions, so we're not going to go back through that. You'll notice I'm using a Stamparatus. When I'm using a larger stamp that has a lot of solid in it, I like to use the Stamparatus because it gives me the option to re-ink and re-stamp the image. That's really important when you have all of that solid area that you're trying to ink on the wings and the back of these puffins. You know, when you're using open line work stamps, it's not as critical, but I like to do it for these types of things. And so you'll see me use the Stamparatus a couple of times for the base here and for a couple of other images. I'm going to go ahead and stamp several things while I have the Stamparatus out and then use them for other parts of this project. On my desk you see an assortment of watercolor pencils. Stampin Up has 2 sets of watercolor pencils, and with the 2 sets that you can get the majority of the bright colors. You don't have to have both sets, but you can use both sets. So what you're seeing me do here is I'm starting with a piece of 6x6 DSP, the Brights, that's Granny Apple Green, and I cut it down to 4.5 by 1 on one side because it's a 6-inch. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a 6x6, so if you take off 1.5 inches, you know you have 4.5 inches. And then I marked it with my pen because it is a mini trimmer. It's hard to get anything wider than 4 1/4. So keep an eye out on this sentiment. So you see me stamping the happy birthday on this yellow DSP, but let me just tell you, it disappears eventually off of my desk. And then we will find it again later. It's sort of magical in the way that it disappears and reappears. So keep an eye out for that. You'll see me also fiddling with the mini trimmer, and I want to highlight the vertical lines on this trimmer help you know that at 1/4 inch increments you can do some things that you might not think you can, but use the plastic guard, and that's how you hold your paper down. Alright, so now we're going to come in and we're going to start working on coloring the puffins in. I'm going to use an assortment of colored pencils to get the different shades. what you see here, I'm picking up the basic gray pencil and putting in a little bit of shadow under the cake plate, and I will come back and do the same thing under the puffins. You don't really want them to be hanging out in midair. And I'm trying to add some shading with these colors, trying to imagine that the light's coming from the upper right hand side, which would give you a little bit darker side to the left, just to get a little bit of depth to the party hat on the puffin on the left. And you know, you can add color in any number of ways. You can use blends, you can use the Stampin' Up markers, and you can use the watercolor pencils. And the watercolor pencils, you can use gray, or you can use gray. You can use them dry, or you can use them with a blender pencil to smooth out the colors. It's whatever your choice is. But keep in mind, when you're using the basic white cardstock, it's not going to be as receptive to the water as if you were using watercolor paper. So you can see I've trimmed down this piece of cardstock to fit on the piece of Granny Apple Green, and I did stop to make sure it was all going to fit on the card, because I have done this before where I've matted it only to realize I had never cut my matting the correct size. So now we're going to come back and add the sentiment on the inside of the card, and we'll go from there. Alright, that's the first card finished. But you notice what's missing is the sentiment in the upper right hand corner. And you see it on the table up there, but I'm going to move on because I'm going to forget about this until a little bit later. I'm going to add some Wink Estella on the candles and go from there. Now we're going to get on to the second card. I'm using a smoky slate card base. I've decided that's one of the card bases I like the best. And then we're going to come back and add the fish in just to make us, you know, sort of add some background for this puffin. So we're going to continue with the color pencils just like we did on the first one, and you'll see me come back and add the fish around this, and then you'll notice that there are I'll add a strip of paper at the very end of this card, and basically that's to cover up a little mistake that I make. So just keep an eye out for that and you'll see it. And there you see, I find the sentiment for the first card. So let's stop what we're doing, cut our flags, put the flag ends to the sentiment, and add that to the page, or add that to the card front. And the other thing I want you to notice is I started out with a large space to work on, and the more I work on these cards, the smaller my workspace becomes. And I think that happens to several of us. So we're going to continue with the card, and you see what happened there is that I didn't get the sentiment. It was did not stamp well, and I don't want to. I could have cut the card apart, but I'm working here to cover up the sentiment, and then we'll just add the new sentiment at the very top. Okay, we're going to continue with colored pencils, covering and coloring all the fish that are in the school of fish. And then you can see I chose a piece of paper that coordinated with the color that I used on the puffin's cap. For the third card, we're going to use a combination of Melon Mambo, Granny Apple Green, and Gorgeous Grape. And we're also going to use a technique called masking. And what you're going to see me do is start with stamping a number of the puffins on the cardstock that were the bases that we have pre-cut. And here I've started to cut a mask until I remember that the cardstock is probably a little too thick to make an effective mask. And so what I normally use is my trusty Post-it paper. Now it's thin, and the best part about it is there is adhesive on it. So all you can do is come back and very quickly fussy cut your mask from around the puffin, and we're going to use that so that we can stack the puffins and make it look like they're stacking, standing one in front of the other. So you use a little bit of the adhesive on the back, and you go from there. And you know, masking like this really can elevate your images, and it's really a very simple thing to do. So all you see me do is I'm used to be stamping off and using second generation ink, so to look like it's a little bit further in the back. So that's with the Melon Mambo. Now I'm getting ready to pick up the purple, the Gorgeous Grape, and I'm going to put a penguin, or excuse me, a puffin behind. There you go. Actually, I probably didn't even need the mask for that. Then I'm going to clean the stamp off and use the Granny Apple Green. When you're using vibrant colors like this, it's important that you clean your stamp in between, and you double check to make sure that they're clean, because you don't want your ink migrating from one stamp pad to the other. But masking, like I said, is a simple technique to really sort of elevate the look of your stamps. And you can see what I'm also doing here is he does stand up behind the other one. And I think what I'm going to end up using here is two masks to really be able to create some depth there. But the masks are super easy to make. The other thing you can think about doing is, if you think you're going to use multiple masks, stamp on two Post-its at one time, and you can cut two at the same time, and that's actually a great way to enhance your card making. Now, I apologize for this all sliding off the screen. Again, that workspace gets a little bit smaller all the time, and I get it a little bit closer to me, and it gets to the edge of the desk. So let's see if we can't get that pulled up a little bit closer. So the masks, you can keep those around and stick them in your stamp set, use them again, or you can just simply cut it each time you need it. It's really whatever is the easiest for you. I'm going to come back, I'm going to trim this one more time, and I'm going to mat this on a piece of the Melon Mambo Designer Series paper and trim it very similarly to what you've seen me trim before, and then get it ready to go, and there we'll have it. Here are the three cards that we made tonight. So we have a group of puffins that we just finished up on card 3. You have the Make-A-Wish with the colored pencils, and then the fish, the school of fish. So stick around. There are going to be some solid images to some images at the end, to some additional cards that I made. And you can see here I'm grabbing that basic gray and adding some shading under those penguins so that they're actually standing and not off floating in midair. So thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this, and be sure to click and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye, guys.